Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jeff Barton, your voice in the mortgage industry. Thanks very much for tuning into the show, for listening to us each and every week as we try to help you make decisions about buying and selling real estate, what kind of mortgage you're going to get. And by the way, the rates are awful, right? Everybody knows that 7.5%, 7.75%, could be heading to 8.5% by the end of the year. We'll just have to wait and see what happens at the Fed meeting on the 20th. I have some thoughts and notes about that and about what's happening both in the economy to drive those rates and also in the inflation front, which is, another thing altogether. I always harp and always go on and on about the gas prices and why oil is what it is. I have my own thoughts, and I have it as it's very little to do with you, the consumer. It has more to do with either the companies themselves or nations adjusting the supply in order to rig the price to be where it is in order to hurt certain countries, individuals, and economies. That being said, you can see this show every week on YouTube. Jeff Barton, the Mortgage Voice, is there. This and as well as many, many shows that we've been doing over the past 9 years. We try to give you a leg up in what your decision-making process is on getting a mortgage, maybe something about the real estate needs that you have. It's a very strange market, and I was talking to some colleagues out in Nevada, and they were saying the same thing, that it's very, very rare, if ever, have I ever seen it. Now, I've been around since the 80s, 40 years in the business there as much, but where you see a high interest rate environment on mortgages and low inventory, and then also coupled with that, very high prices, escalating prices, and inflation also going up, albeit at a modest rate, but still going up. All of these things conspire against first-time home buyers, maybe somebody who wants to get out of a low-end mortgage that they're already in and move to a different house. It's tough to get rid of that 3% mortgage or that 4% mortgage. I know. I used to be in one. Now, I've paid off my house, and there's a lot of people out there who have paid off their houses. It gives us the entree to the reverse mortgage product. One of my agents was in here today, and we were talking about the reverse mortgage product and why more people aren't taking advantage of it. Simply because they're afraid. Hey, I don't want my house to be taken by the bank. That was the number one comment that we hear all the time when we're talking about reverse mortgages. Now, nothing could be further from the truth. There's no difference between a forward mortgage, which is a 30-year fixed rate, right? Or a reverse mortgage, which is basically you don't have to pay the mortgage. You can pay the mortgage, or you can pay a portion of the mortgage. It just means that the money that you're not spending on the mortgage gets added to the mortgage, and that one day when you do sell or pass away, or you and your wife, has to be two of you, pass away, your heirs still have the opportunity to pay off the mortgage, refinance the mortgage, or to sell the property to pay off the loan. All of these things we've been dealing with, talking with, and very, very interesting time we are in. And like I say, all of these products that are available, all these things we've been discussing on KCAA, the great station that we're talking to and about, and from 4 years, 9 years we've been with KCAA. Great people out there, Fred, his son. They do a great job, and they're in the Inland Empire. Welcome to everybody over there in the San Bernardino Riverside area. How's it feeling out there? Do you feel like the country's headed in the right direction, or are you feeling as if maybe it's time to lock in those particular jobs that maybe you've been shopping around? Maybe you've gone from job to job because obviously during the past, 18 months, 2 years, we've seen labor make some great strides in improving not only working conditions, but income. The income in a lot of different areas. And there are a couple of lingering strikes out there in the marketplace. Again, I will get to that. Okay, so we have about 4 minutes left in the intro here. I wanted to talk some about why a 7% mortgage today is different than a 7% mortgage, say, 2 decades ago, when it was very common. For over a decade, 2 decades ago, so we're talking 30 years to 20 years ago, 7%, 7.5% mortgages were the norm. That's exactly what we were paying for mortgages. And it wasn't in the same type of situation that we are in now, and I want to talk a little bit about that. I talked last week about it, about lock-in, what lock-in is, but let's just review what exactly lock-in is. Okay, so if you were getting a mortgage, a brand new mortgage, or refinancing a mortgage, which millions of people did during the pandemic, rates hit as low as the high 2%. So anywhere from high 2% to 4.5%, 5% is an excellent mortgage. And a lot of people, most people, refinanced into those mortgages. Since that time, the problem is that we have mortgage interest rates that are now, as I said, 7.5% on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Now, the 15-year and the rest of the mortgages, as I said, we will get into it later on in the show. But if you have a 3% mortgage, you're not refinancing that property. You are not buying a new property, selling this property. Why would you? Where are you going to get that type of low payment on a loan that you have? I mean, think about it. $500,000 loan at 3% versus a $500,000 loan at 7%. You want to double your payment or more than double your payment. So that's what we call lockup, because nobody's moving. People who have those mortgages are staying where they're staying. And people who obviously are trying to get a new mortgage or new properties, that's the other side of the equation. People who have these low mortgages do not move. If you have, let's say, a 7% mortgage today, what's the difference if you move? You're going to get another 7% mortgage. So there's more movement of properties. There's more properties on the market. There's more people buying and selling of those properties, and that's where we have lockup. And when there is lockup, we just don't have the properties on the market that we would normally have. I mean, the stunningly low inventory that we've been experiencing over the past 3 years is even worse today than it has been worth because of this lockup effect. The 7% mortgage rates are so much worse for now than 20 years ago, this particular article says. The average on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage was 7.18 last week. This is going back a couple of weeks, after surging to 7.24%. The week prior, according to Freddie Mac, that was the third straight week the rate topped 7%. First time that's happened since April of 2002. This is a trend that's going to continue. We see the Fed looking at both inflation numbers and where they have to hike the short-term interest rates that banks lend to one another in order to maintain their liquidity requirements per Dodd-Frank. And what we see is that this trend is likely to continue because of the inflation. We saw inflation go up a little bit. Then it's going to mean that the Fed is going to remain what they call hawkish, i.e. they're going to tighten the credit by raising interest rates. Thus, and it's tangential, but it happens, you're going to see mortgage interest rates rise again. The banks themselves are not ready to relax their lending standards. They're not ready to say, hey, you know what? We feel good about the market. We feel good about the economy. We feel good that the consumer is ready to pay a lower price mortgage. And in the big lenders, we're talking about United Wholesale and Rocket Mortgage. They've been in a very conservative lending mode. Yes, they're rolling out some 40 years, and yes, they have the DSCR programs. But all in all, both of these the largest mortgage lenders in the country combined together, I mean, really dwarf everybody else. They're tightening their standards. They're not loosening their standards. And what I mean by that is credit score, money down payment, other documentation that you're going to need that you might not generally need in a looser credit environment. All of these things are happening, and they're all happening right now. So if you're out there and you're thinking, what are we to do? Well, we're going to deal with this later on in the show, talk a little bit more about the mortgage interest rates, where they are, where they're going to go, where they most likely are going to end up by the end of the year. And I predict we're probably going to top 8% by the end of the year. It just seems to me that inflation is going to flare enough that the Fed is going to continue to raise rates, and that tangentially, as I said, will raise the mortgage interest rate. Anyway, you are listening to Jeff Barton. I am the Mortgage Voice. Really appreciate you tuning into the show, and we'll be right back.